Well, Laurel Emory, welcome. Such a pleasure to have you with us. How are you today?
I am doing well. I'm excited. I've been
Nice.
spending some time with clients today, which has been a delight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise. So
Yeah.
imagine this. Imagine two coaches coming together for a podcast who work for the same company, have for almost 6 years, having very similar experiences, right, as coaches. And yet, as you and I both know, we have very different, not worldviews as much as we do the way that we engage with the world. We're just wired
Yeah.
very differently, you and I. And the reason that we're talking, so I'm going to give credit where credit is due, as I just told you before I started the hit record, is that my wife Tony said when you commented to me, you know what, I would love to talk about what do you do when you don't feel all
Mhm.
in, and I just sort of dismissed it. If I'm honest with you, I just like whatever, that doesn't even make sense to me. Like, I love you, but I don't even know what you're talking about. And Tony was like, because seriously, Laurel, I don't think I've ever had the one day I had that is when I was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Mhm.
And I write about it in the book. Like, I was just sort of curled up on a bench at a car wash. I remember it vividly. And I was like, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's the only day I can remember in my whole life
Yeah.
that I've ever been like that. So it's just, I have an odd wiring system, and I recognize that. But Tony said, I think you really ought to listen to Laurel. I think she's got something that will be really valuable to people. So,
Mhm.
so in the intro, I've explained to people that you and I have worked together, and we work for the same company. We work for Building Champions. But what people may not realize is most of us live different places,
Yeah.
right? I live in Southern California. You live in the Central Coast of California. We're based in Portland. As is the case, increasingly, people can live anywhere. And so it's not like you and I hang out, right? We get a
Right.
chance to, we see each every Monday morning on our Zoom calls every Monday morning. And then when we have our coach summits and training and hopefully a Christmas party, we see each other then, but that's about it. So
Yeah.
so I'm really excited about this. And so let me just lead in with that initial point that you made. And that is, you know what? There are days when you just don't feel like being all in, right?
Yeah. Exactly. For sure. Like, I think I know we hear it a lot from our clients, and I have experienced with my clients, and even beforehand, that every single one of us has a reason to not be all in. Like,
Mm,
when I've given some workshops with some clients, like, we talk about, we're all a part of a club that we didn't want to be a member of, that we didn't want to join, that sort
yep,
of a thing.
yep,
And like, in listening to your podcast, like, I heard some great examples of that, like Ricky Rayleigh with his paralysis,
totally.
Jake Jones, is that what his name was?
Yep,
His brain injury. So,
yep.
we've seen examples of that, and you had multiple other guests as well.
Hmm.
But I mean, I was with a client today. She's been divorced within the last month. She
Mm,
has two preteen boys. She's moving into single parenthood.
mm,
And so, so there's just stuff like that
yeah,
for all of us:
for sure.
addiction, mental health, death, miscarriages. I mean, the list could
Sure,
go on of things
sure.
that we just don't anticipate that we could,
Mm,
become a part of that club that we just
yeah.
didn't want to join, didn't think about joining. And I was listening to Josh Meadows'
Hmm.
interview with you, and like, he talked about kind of a horrible day that he had,
Hmm.
and he didn't go into the details of the day, but what it made me think about is that most people are not like Josh and are able to then pull themselves out of it and, make good choices,
Right.
not drink the glass of
Sure.
wine,
Right.
all of
Or
that.
two or three. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, there's the weight of that being so heavy for some people that it's just easier for them to just keep coasting
Mm,
rather than to, put their foot on the gas and say, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to get myself out of
yeah.
this. I'm going to kind of move on from this. So
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I know it's easy because I'm listening to myself talk in my head as I'm hearing you, and I'm thinking about, 16 years of coaching sessions and so many lives that you and I get to climb inside of. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's the cool thing about coaching that I don't think people realize. Generally we learn from our own life experiences, and however many years we've aged, we have that much. But you and I have sort of logarithmic,
Mm-hmm.
experiential learning through others, through so many clients, right? We see so many examples and different things that go on. And so I hear you and I think, well, okay, so I can choose to be a victim, right? I've
Right.
had my stuff, you've had your stuff. Like you said,
Yep.
everybody's been through it. Or
Yep.
I can choose to dig down deep and pull myself up by my bootstraps. And that, that all sounds really good. But I'll tell you what, I just had a conversation with a client who is I can only get in trouble with guessing her age, so I won't. But she is I'll call her a young woman who has had 4 kids in 6 years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, running hard, running a very strong business. Her husband now is dealing with an illness. Now he's making bad choices
Yep.
about sort of self-medicating. And I mean, our whole coaching session, I'm sure you've had these, it's like, you know what? I don't even want to talk about business. Honestly,
Right.
this is much more of a therapy session because I just want to get in my car and
Yeah.
keep driving.
Right.
Isn't
Yes.
that kind of what you're talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, my comment to you was, I never expected as a young woman that I would wind up, in a place of being married to a man who has significant PTSD from childhood experiences, along the lines of what our good mutual friend Peter Bartolini shared with you about
Right.
the group home that they have.
Right.
That was Corey's experience of being the only white young boy, teenage boy, in an all black group home.
Wow.
So that's just one tiny little piece of
Sure.
it. So there's just all this, trauma that he has, in addition to that, mental health difficulties that I'm now in this place of, or have been in this place where this summer, next month, we celebrate 18 years of marriage.
Wow.
But of just like, me needing to be all in for us because he can't be. So like your client that you just mentioned, like clearly there has to be this decision point for her, like there has been for me, of do I cut and run?
Right.
Or am I all in and I'm
totally.
Like, I'm okay, I'm committed. I am sticking to my vows, through these things that I never wanted. I never expected. And
yet they're covered sickness and in health. Like,
right.
Wait a minute, we did cover that, right? Yeah. I get it.
Right there, it wasn't even fine print.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
There's a contract.
Yeah.
What?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But I think we see that with our clients, and we see that in our own lives, that it's like, oh, okay, that's what that means.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard to come, face to face with it.
Well, so let's talk about your experience, and then I'd love to hear about how you coach clients through that. And I do love that you've had this experience personally, so that you have something to fall back on, and it's not just esoteric for you, right? This is something that is at your core.
Yeah.
So when did that first surface? And feel free to, draw your lines and boundaries wherever you want on this. But I mean, are you saying that when you guys got married, you were unaware of this?
Yeah, I think, it's one of those things, people ask me that a lot. And I think reflecting back, like I was just an ignorant 20-something, at the time. And so,
by the way, that goes hand in hand.
Yes, I know.
That's
I know
automatic.
That now. Right? Of course, we don't think that then. We think
no way.
Invincible, and we know everything. But no, I think literally, like looking back now, knowing what I know, like there were signs, and had I been more aware, more educated, had people in my life that had those things, then I certainly would have gotten it, and would have had that awareness. But I was just completely ignorant. So there was that for me, of just like this wake up call that, as our marriage aged, however you say that, we've been married for more years. like, oh, okay, there's
Got it.
something else going on here.
Right. Right.
We ought to kind of, have some conversations about this, and
Yeah.
maybe we should seek some help about it. So
Yeah. And so is that what you did?
we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I mean, we, quite honestly, I think, throughout the 18 years of us being together, like we've had counseling and all of that for, from the get-go, really,
Yeah.
because that's something that I strongly believe in, is
Cool.
that we all need that outside insight and that outside help, for us.
Right.
But there was a point where it was like, okay, there's something more to this than just dysfunction or unhealthiness or something. So so we went through a stage of actually seeking greater help beyond just therapy. So and it's been good and helpful.
I appreciate you laying that out. And the other thing I think I see in my in this fantasy land of optimism that I live in, my wife would tell you that truly, like my sister, who's 12 years older than me, I will tell people I lived in the most amazing family growing up. My sister was already gone, 12 years old, when she was in college, right? And all I remember are good things, right?
Yeah.
And my dad was in the advertising business in the 60s, so 50s and 60s. So it was like Mad Men. I lived Mad Men as a child, right?
Awesome.
But my sister points out, well, yeah, what you're not pointing out, though, is that you grew up essentially in a playpen with mom and dad smoking and drinking highballs all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that's what they did, right? So her view of my childhood is very different than mine. So I do sort of live in this self-created, fantasy land, which is great for me. But it does create some issues. So as you described that, I'm thinking, okay, she mentioned the marriage vows, didn't really see the signs, at some point saw more triggers.
Yep.
And then I usually go the same place. When it's a marriage issue with clients, I'll say, hey, at some point you stood in front of an altar, a priest, a pastor, a courthouse, something.
Yeah.
And you exchange vows, right? And so I now see that as and you're helping me to see it differently. It's like a 50-50 proposition is the way I see it, meaning there's going to be a time where I'm going to need help, and there's going to be a time when you're going to need help. And I suppose in a perfect world, which apparently is where I think I live, that's how it would be. But yours is disproportionate, is my guess, right? And I don't know if that's 90-10, 70-30, 60-40. Maybe it depends on the day or the week or the month, but that's going to happen, right? There's going to be a horrible diagnosis. There's going to be an accident. There's going to be someone who serves overseas and comes home with PTSD.
Yeah.
Any of those things can happen. And suddenly it's like, okay, I mean, like you said, I'm either going to bolt or I'm going to be all in. And those to me are always the amazing stories. And I think because yours is relatively, it's invisible. I mean, Corey's an author. On the surface, you just wouldn't see it, right? You wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I think yours is more insidious, I guess, and it would be different if somebody was in a wheelchair. So So anyway, with all of that said, how do you help clients when they like that client that I just mentioned to you? Where would you begin with her?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, it's interesting. I had another conversation earlier today with a prospective client, and we were talking about this. And I think for us as coaches, like we have to just determine like what is our lane and what are we actually capable of. So there are times when we're able to, speak into those things with people like you mentioned, but then there are other times when it's like, I'm sorry, but this is beyond my pay grade.
Totally.
You need something different than what I can offer you. You need a different kind of help. So I think there's that and I think that is a big piece just in general is you need to have people in your life. Sometimes that's friends, sometimes that's family, but sometimes that is actual expert practitioners, whether they're psychiatrists or, some sort of a specialist in medicine or, whatever the case may be. And so that is a big one. I mean, that has been huge for me, is just to make sure that I have people in my life who are encouraging me, who are praying for me, who are understanding, who are providing that, expert opinion and that perspective about things that I just am completely ignorant about. So that's, yeah, huge.
So, and as a coach, I'll bet you've had the same thing happen that I have many, many times where I realize, yeah, I'm over my head. I can tell you my personal experience. I can tell you what I think. I think I've got a certain degree of experience and wisdom here, but this is not my training.
Yes.
So what's your action plan?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Go find a marriage and family counselor.
Yes.
Right? Go consult with an attorney. Go talk to a priest. Go whatever. But sometimes that's the best action plan. And my experience is sometimes people kind of just need to hear that, yeah, I know I need to do that. Okay. And now my coach is going to hold me accountable that I found somebody, which, by the way, is a whole nother story, right? I'd love to hear if you have thoughts on that. One of the things that I've discovered is, just like in coaching or any other endeavor, not all therapists are created equal. So the letters after their name qualify them. But sometimes a referral, sometimes a rating system is going to be helpful. Like, how do I know? How do I know if this one's going to be a good one or not?
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah, I think I've definitely gone through that with clients for sure. And I think because of my own personal experience, like I've created a list, if you will, of people who are amazing and excellent, at what they do. And so if there's a possibility for me to actually give them a referral, then I will do that.
How perfect is that? Yeah.
But if not, then, check with, insurance plans. Insurance plans have lists of, people. And nowadays we have the whole, rateyourmd.com and et cetera, et cetera. So going through those channels is big. And then even just crowdsourcing it through Facebook, I see that all the time of who do you know who does XYZ, who do you know who's a pulmonologist or, whatever. So, and that's important to utilize our networks for that.
I don't want to get off topic, but I think it might speak to somebody. The funny thing that when you say that, like a pulmonologist, it actually reminds me of a client that I noticed in 2 consecutive sessions, and I'll bet you've had this experience too, there was this kind of throat clearing that was going on at their end, right? And I'm like, do you notice that you're clearing your throat a lot? And she was like, no. I said, well, you are. So who knows, right? I mean, it could be GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. It could be acid. It could be an ulcer. You should get checked out. Create an action plan around that. And in 16 years, you see everything, I think, at some point, right? But seriously, sometimes we have to be sort of hypersensitive to all the cues that come in and question it, call it out. Like, do you see this? Because I see this, right?
Yeah.
So getting back to the major point here, if you have someone who is in that moment, like the woman, let's go with the one that you described, if you don't mind. Maybe it would be easier to use my example or a hybrid. But if somebody's in that mode where it's like, I am seriously overwhelmed, it was all I could do to make this call.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you begin to coach that person to take some baby steps out of that?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I think it's a hard thing, honestly, because as you know, like I do, everyone is different in how they respond to that. But if someone is actually reaching out for help, that's good. And even just acknowledging that, like I usually start there of, I am so proud of you for even bringing this up. Like this probably was a difficult thing, and just, making that acknowledgement. And then usually I'll run through the list with them about people in their life. Like, who do you know who's maybe already experienced something like this?
Yeah.
What are your resources like, whether it be pastors or therapists or, just different people in different walks of life, kind of depending upon, what it is they're going through. I really like what, Ken Perry said in one of your episodes about serving others. Like, even when we're in the midst of something that is so heavy for ourselves, to have something that is a vision beyond our circumstances is so critical.
Absolutely.
Because I know I have experienced this on many occasions with things with Corey, where I'm just so weighted down and so feeling like I'm stuck in the mire of, this circumstance, or, this particular season that we're going through, or that particular season or whatever. And being able to shift that focus off of myself onto, in my case, my coaching clients or the nonprofits that I serve and work with, just being able to have, that outlet to serve others and to, is so critical. I can't emphasize that strongly enough. Like for me, being able to be active in other people's lives and helping them find solutions oftentimes not only just lifts my mood, but it also helps me to find solutions for myself as well.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. And it reminds me of, I have never thought of this application, but our head coach and CEO, founder of Building Champions, Daniel Harkavy, calls it bifocal vision, where we have the ability to look down through our lenses and see our current reality, but also to be able to look up and look out at the horizon at future state. Now, the way we're normally using that is in relation to a business vision. I've never thought of it in a personal situation like this, where it's like, I'm not loving this activity or this moment or this stress or whatever the situation is, but to be able to look out through those lenses, right, and look out at either that next project or something else to look forward to, or like you said, serving others, which I think is the other part of it is. And don't you see that a lot, where people get so mired in their own muck, it's just kind of stirring their own pot, that once you step out of that and you are serving others, particularly in a voluntary way, I just think that's a completely different dynamic.
Yeah.
Doesn't that help you to sort of put things in perspective?
Immensely. Yeah. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not the only one here that is struggling. It's like, oh yeah, there are everyone around us,
That's
has
right.
something else that they're
That's
going
right.
through, that sort of thing.
So Laurel, what else tactically, if somebody sort of needs something right now, like I can't even function, I'm not getting through my days effectively, is there, short of the referral to a professional, do you have any tools that you've found that, I go for a walk, I meditate, I pray, anything along those lines that are valuable?
All of the above. Yeah. All of the above are excellent. So journaling is a big one for me. And I know it is for clients of mine as well, of just like actually getting the thoughts down on paper. And, and for me, it's me actually turning it over to God and talking to God about it. So not just, a book that I'm putting on a shelf somewhere, but it's, an active dialogue that I'm having with God.
Love that.
And then certainly, getting outside, there is so much scientific research that talks about that, of like, I am going for a walk, even if it's 5 minutes, or one time around the block or something. It really can just completely alter your mood state and, where you're at. So those are great ones for sure. For a lot of people, music is an amazing, helper in that. Obviously the right kind of music, because otherwise you could be sitting in Sarah McLachlan Melancholy Land or something,
or explicit lyrics like, maybe anger isn't what I need right now.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I've seen that be really helpful for clients as well. And then making sure that you're eating well, and again, kind of Josh Meadows, example of not going for the salami and cheese.
Totally.
And
that was such a great element in that story. Or the wine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have in that place, have some discipline in the sense of, that it's just going to drag you down even further, that's totally. So tactically, some really good ones.
Such great advice. So from your own personal experience, take me back there, because somebody's probably listening or watching right now, Laurel, is my experience, that is there.
Yep.
They may very well say, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I'm experiencing right now. And I mean, you like 15, 16 years ago, right? Where it was like, okay, didn't see this. Maybe I didn't catch those signs, or You know how the beginning of relationships are. They're generally, you're so caught up in the romance, like Tony often describes that as the romantic magic. It's you can't sustain that forever, right? You'd go crazy if you were always just like, oh, and I'm going to send him a love note, and oh, it's just all so wonderful, and this is fantastic, and then there will be the wedding dress, and well, there's a day where that's over, and your spouse has bad breath, right, and leaves his underwear on the floor, and then when you exacerbate that with what you then at some point realized, or it was diagnosed as PTSD, I just want to kind of take you back to that time and encourage that person, because I am convinced that someone either now or will listen to or watch this and say, oh my goodness, that is my life right now. What is there something that you would have done differently or sooner if you could go back and be that girl?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think two things in particular. Like, one, I was not compassionate toward myself in that, of being able to look at the situation and say, it's okay. You didn't do anything to create this. Like, there was part of that for me that was like, is somehow this my fault? Or, did I wind up here because of something that I did, or, things like that. So I wasn't really very kind or thoughtful enough to myself in it. And I think I probably would have, at the very least, done better self-care, if not actually reached out to people sooner to say, like, I need some help for me in this. Like, it's not all about Corey. And, so just what does that look like for me to help take care of me?
That's so smart.
Yeah.
One of the things we talk about in coaching are the 3 buckets, right? The control, influence, no control. And it sounds like what you're saying there is there was a huge part of that you couldn't control. But there was a part that you could influence. And absolutely. The thing you could control was yourself, right? The way that you viewed it, your self-care, how you treated yourself. That's actually really great advice. Yeah.
I think the second part that comes into play for me, and I don't know that everyone would be this way. For me, I had a tendency to, like, actually the way you said it a moment ago was perfect. Like, you come into marriage thinking this is 50-50. And because it wasn't that way, and I was experiencing something different, like, I moved to a place of anger and like, this is not fair.
This is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, this is not what I signed up for. And so for me, like, if I had recognized that in the way that I do now, looking back, like, just being able to, there was some pridefulness in it. So being able to follow my pride and just be able to say, okay, your expectations were just not healthy here. Like, this is not actually the way that it was, meant to be. Like, how you said, like, there are times where the pendulum is totally going to swing. And, one time it is 50-50, and then other times you're given 90% and et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's that piece too. Again, I don't know that everyone will experience that, but just being able to bring yourself to a place of better calmness, that would have been helpful for me, of being able to say, okay, this isn't Corey's fault either. This is something that, it's just life,
Totally.
So how do we actually work through that and live through that without placing blame on one another, and without having unhealthy expectations of thinking, oh, well, it needs to be all about me, or, there needs to be this even 50-50.
That's really honest and transparent. I really appreciate you saying that, because as you were describing all this, I could see myself sort of playing that tape in my own mind. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how I would have felt about that. Like, hang on, this isn't what I saw. Of course, on the other side of the coin, and I'm sure you've gone through this, is it's certainly not what Corey signed on for at whatever age this began.
Absolutely
for him.
Not. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I am convinced that this will be one of those interviews that people will want to share, because you're really wise in this area. And I'm telling you, Laurel, it is something I never would have touched on ever. And so I give credit to my bride because
Yeah.
she sees
Yay,
things through a
Tony.
different lens than I do. She totally does. And I told you before the recording, I'm not kidding when I say I think the first 10 years of marriage, I was pretty sure I had it all figured out. And this was my partner. But
Yeah.
then I realized, oh, actually, she is so much wiser in so many areas than I am. I have this little lane I'm really good in, but she has this amazing lane. And to this day, by the way, if you hung out with us, you would see her on the phone with friends, family, and guess what she's doing?
Mm-hmm.
Coaching.
Yep. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
seriously.
No,
And
I
she's
know
better
you
than
have
I
a
am.
wise wife.
I,
I
I
love
really
your
do. And
wife.
that's the whole reason that we're talking. So here's what I know. If you were watching this or listening to this, there's probably a reason, and you or someone you know could benefit from this. So Laurel, here's what I want to ask. If you could describe to me your perfect client or engagement or even organization that you'd like to work with. Like if somebody wants to reach out to you, and I don't even know what your capacity is right now, but if they're intrigued and they say, man, I could use a little more Laurel Emory, like who's an ideal engagement for you right now?
Yeah, honestly, I do. I love working with people who are broken and who are struggling with being all in. I mean, those are some of my favorite clients, just from the standpoint of, I feel like, there's something that I can offer from my personal experience. And I could give you, gosh, a laundry list, as I know you could too, of people that I've worked with, even just within the last year who are, dealing with the muck and the mire of life and,
Yep.
How we navigate through that while they're, building amazing businesses or being, executives at, Fortune 750 companies and
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera. So
Yep.
I love working with people that just find themselves in that place of like, okay, everything is not firing on all cylinders.
Totally.
How do I get it there?
Well, unfortunately, there aren't any of those people out there. So apparently it's going to be Oh, wait. No, that's only in my brain. That's right. In the real world, the world is full of those people. And here's what I know. I know for sure you are a gifted coach. You have amazing formal training as well as just this sort of life experience, Laurel, and an enormous heart. And I'm honored to be able to work with you and call
Thank you.
you partner. So
Oh, that's so
I'm
sweet.
thrilled that we have this opportunity to do this today. If you've heard this today and you think I need to connect with Laurel, reach out to us at buildingchampions.com and you'll find Laurel there. And what a pleasure this has been today. I appreciate you bringing a different aspect to the all-in conversation. And you do rock, Laurel Emory. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
You too.